Despite our shared culture, traditions, and history as Arab Christians and Muslims, the Western world managed to portray us as two polarized groups, constantly at odds with each other. But the truth is, there is so much that unites us, and today we want to celebrate our cultural and spiritual similarities in the hope that you will judge for yourself that we are not divided, but we are one people. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Chatting with Slava the Jordanian. I'm your host, STJ. And today's panel, your favorite panel, my one and only JD Yusef and Dr. Ihab in order for us to share with you our experiences and what we were taught as children and how we see the Arab world as adults, of course, after life, many experiences and exploration too. So, welcome, my panel. Welcome back. Thank you so much, guys, for coming on. I know we are all busy and have a lot going on in our life. So we really appreciate you being available. This topic, it's been on my mind for a long time, actually since I left my home world, the Middle East, and embarked on the Western world to seek higher education. And of course, as you go through life, you're trying to focus on the goal and you're trying to focus on achieving your dream, you kind of get lost with the whole process of adaptability, simulation, acculturation, and also working really hard trying to be accepted by the Western world. Now, we decided that we want to discuss this in order to relate to our audience, watchers, and listeners, how we perceive our world as Arabs, despite your race, despite your religion, despite your life experiences or your heritage. Growing up in Saudi Arabia, my education mostly, it was in Saudi. Now, Saudi Arabia education is very much focused on the Wahhabism approach on life. Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, he is the one who launched the movement in the Arabian Peninsula in order to unify Saudi Arabia. So the Saudi Arabia as it is right now, or Saudi Arabia that we know right now, it was divided just like when Italy was divided into multiple kingdoms. It was north, south, east, west, and the center of Saudi Arabia. And for some reason, the Saudi Arabian tribes, they drifted away from the Islamic way of life and they got into more the spirituality and meditation and magic and spells, and they launched a lot of tribal wars. They were constantly fighting for dominance. Muhammad al-Wahhab realized that and he said, we need to go back to our origin, that we have to live cohesively, back to the teaching of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, the Islamic prophet, and hoping to unify the whole country. So all the teachings that I received in Saudi Arabia was very conservative Wahhabism, Islam teaching. Now, we need to differentiate between that kind of teaching to the teaching that, for example, Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, Egypt, they teach Islam very different than Saudi Arabia. Now, one of the hubs of the Islamic centers is in Al-Azhar in Egypt, and then the other hub, which is out of Saudi Arabia. These two hubs constantly negotiating. There's a lot of amendments that comes out of these two schools of thought in order to modernize some of the logistics in order to fit our modern life. So what I was told, of course, I was born Muslim, I practice Islam, both of my parents are Muslim, is Christian Arabs are very different than Muslim Arabs. their beliefs, in their customs and their cultures. So that became my belief system. Now, granted, we had a lot of Armenian Lebanese friends in Saudi Arabia, and that was my first eye opener to the Christian world, the Christian Arab world, because my mom's best friend out of the AUB, American University in Beirut, she was Armenian Lebanese, and her husband was contracted in Saudi Arabia. So we actually got to see them and live with them before they moved on to the United States. And I was fascinated by the Armenian culture, and I was going through kind of a tug of war because I go back to school and it was very conservative. It's all about the Islamic belief system, spiritually, culturally, and socially. But yet I go home, we're socializing, swimming in the pool, playing with all these Armenian kids, and we exchange ideas, like we are comparing our belief system. And it dawned on me, and I always tell my moms, like, we're not that different. She said, why did you think that we were different? They are still Arabs. They have the same beliefs. They have the same values, the traditional gender role expectations. And I asked my mom, I was in high school, and I said, why are we taught that Christian Arabs are so different than Muslim Arabs? And my mom just told me that, don't think about these things, finish your school, then you can deal with it later in life. So here we are. Again, my father is originally Palestinian, my mom Jordanian, born Muslim. We have Dr. Ihab Abdurrahim, he's Muslim Egyptian, and we have JD Yusef, who is Orthodox Christian Palestinian. So we have the panel, so let's jump into it. Let's start with Dr. Ihab Abdurrahim, since you were here at age 2. And can you just give us the belief system that you grew up with, comparing Muslim Egyptian and Christian Egyptians?
So, growing up, most of the family friends were Palestinian Muslims or Egyptian Muslims that I personally interacted with. We'd go over their houses. They'd come over our house for dinner. We used to watch. I remember this Palestinian family. Everybody was big in wrestling back then. WWF, and everybody would either gather at their house or their apartment or our apartment, and they'd watch wrestling till 11 or midnight, and they'd have food. And but what's weird and interesting is I never had any Arab Christian friends growing up. Myself personally, my parents might have, but I did not. And when I left Jersey City, we moved to Old Bridge, was the first time. This is kind of funny that I had not forget about Arab Christian friends, where I'd interact with them, and they were Catholic, so we'd interact. We'd have we'd share stories of our religions, and then I started hearing the similarities, and I'd ask my parents, there's a lot of similarities between Islam, Christianity, and Judaism too. And my mom and dad said, of course there is. There's a lot of similarity, but that cohesion of faiths of Islam and Christianity in the Arab world, I did not that hadn't happened until I got to college. So I met a couple of Christian people. I think one of them was a Christian Jordanian, I believe, and very nice guy. We got along. We talked a lot. We talked about the faiths and things like that. And that's kind of the first time really I started kind of seeing things not differently, just seeing how the two faiths of the Arab world are just so similar. And then when we met JD Yusef, and he started telling us some really in-depth, he knows a lot about it. And I started thinking wow, this is amazing that we concentrate just the faiths, all the big faiths, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. We concentrate on the 5%, that's different amongst us, as being the prime factor of our disagreements, when actually 95% of the time we actually do agree within our faiths and amongst our faiths than I've ever seen. And then when we went to Egypt, it really, opened my eyes, and I saw something there that I thought was beautiful, was wonderful, and different. That the Christian and the Arab Muslim population were almost one united, like, it was amazing, wild. And then hearing that I grew up, or when I was born in an area which is a Christian Muslim in Cairo. There, it's called Shubra, and how they all interacted and cared about each other like family, and nobody looked at the religions. They were just Arabs. They were Egyptians, actually. So this is what I want people to kind of look at and say, hey, can we expand this? Can this actually expand? And I think it's there, but again, we have a lot of this negativity going on around the world, and we've got to overcome it and really take ourselves to an enlightened level and next level to really kind of push back the darkness and bring out the light of the religions and the faiths.
Dr. Ihab, that's a very good point. And to piggyback on kind of what you just said is people need to understand that in this time in the Middle East, religion was deeply political. Persecution often came not from theological differences, but imperial insecurity, right? Arab Christians served vital roles in both the Roman and Persian frontiers and shared more with their Muslim neighbors in culture and language than with their imperial overlords. Early Islam did not emerge in opposition to Christianity, but in a world where Christian sects were often at war with each other, and many saw Muslims as a more just force. And to solidify that last point, we can literally see it today in 2025, where we have Christianity's most holiest site right now. It's actually in control of two Muslim families in Palestine, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, just to reinforce kind of how these Christian sects would war with one another within the church, within Jerusalem, and it often got nasty. So what would they do? They would go to their Muslim overlords who were more just than the previous empires, to reinforce that point. 637, Bishop Sophronius gave up Jerusalem to Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab bloodless. They did not come in with the sword. They did not come in to convert. They actually came in to protect. Again, the Christians in the Levant were under persecution, one side by the Roman Byzantines and the other side by the Persian Sassanid Empire. So again, there was no opposition to when the Arabs came from the Gulf. It was either they fought along one another, which is very controversial, and you can definitely look this up, or they didn't resist at all. So very, very interesting points.
No, this is absolutely beautiful, and I am enjoying this interaction tremendously. The funny thing is, my father-in-law, Allah yarhamu Abu Ihab wa yahsin ilayh, he used to tell me, as you know, Egypt was a melting pot, right? It was mixed, even in their socials, before Abdel Nasser, during the Turkish King Farouk. Everybody was mixed together, Christian, Jewish, and Muslim Egyptians. And my father-in-law's best friend, he was a Jewish Egyptian. And when Abdel Nasser took over in 1952-53 and made it his mission just to not to kick the Jewish Egyptians out, just he made it so impossible for them to continue navigating their businesses, taking care of the business. He just nationalized everything. And I think it was his indirect way to make him give up and just leave the country. And my father-in-law used to tell me it was heartbreaking, Slava, because he came to him and he said, listen, we're leaving, we're going to Canada, we're just taking as much as we can in our luggage and our purses, and I can't take everything with me. So he took my father-in-law to his condo, which is absolutely beautiful, custom made marble floors, the chandeliers, the custom made handcrafted furniture. And he walked my father-in-law through his condo and he said, take whatever you want, please. I rather give it to my friends than have the government just take it. And my father-in-law said, where am I going to put this stuff? I don't even have an apartment big enough to fit any of this stuff, nor it's my style. It's very, very luxurious. And my father-in-law, every time he told me that story, I can hear the sadness in his voice. He was very, very sad that, he lost that friend because of the political ambitions, and the political narratives. So when I lived with my in-laws and I talked to them constantly about it, and they used to tell me how they don't see religion. They don't see color. Egyptian is an Egyptian. And the definition of an Arab from my research is anybody, regardless of your background, anybody that consider their native tongue is Arabic. They are Arabs. And if you look into their customs or the code of conduct, their style of a personality style, it's very much Arab regardless. So Arabian comes first. So they play upon the Arabian characteristics and custom before they play upon their Nubian tradition or North African tradition or Levantine tradition or that even Turkish, what I'm saying, or even Eastern European countries, they consider themselves Muslim and they have adapted a lot of the Arabian customs. Even Armenian Christians, all their custom is Arabic customs. But yeah, the only difference is when we pray differently. That's it. Now, that said, when I went to Egypt, I went to the first mosque that I prayed in is the Masjid Amr ibn al-As Mosque. Amr ibn al-As Mosque, within the same street, you cross the street and you enter St. Sergius Church. The St. Sergius Church is the church where the Virgin Mary, Sittina Maryam, and Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, when he was 3 months old, they escaped, right, from Jerusalem and they came to Egypt, and they lived in that site that eventually got built into the St. Sergius Church. They lived there for about 3 months. Then they traveled Upper Egypt, which is Luxor, Aswan. Then they went back to Jerusalem when they felt it's a lot safer for the Prophet Jesus to actually grow up in Jerusalem. So when I went out of that mosque, Min Amr ibn al-As Mosque, and Ihab's cousin, he said, okay, let's go. I said, I want to see this church. So we walked literally right across the street, the same courtyard. And it was a mix. It was a mix of Christian and Muslim Egyptian celebrating that church, visiting that church, touring that church. And when they heard that we were visiting from the United States, they were so happy and so proud to take us around. And remember, Ihab, the guy, he gave us so much free stuff just to welcome us to Egypt. And they were talking to Ihab's relatives, which were Muslim, and then they're Christian. But again, most of Ihab's family that lived in Cairo, they grew up in Shubra, Egypt, or Shubra, Cairo. The stores are Christians. Even the pictures, the symbols, crosses everywhere, Jesus pictures everywhere. When Ihab's aunt passed away, the men that insisted to carry her from her deathbed to the cemetery to be buried were her long-time Orthodox Christian Egyptian neighbors.
Wow.
All the men that carried her, other than her husband and her son, they were all her neighbors that her daughters grew up with. So that was an eye-opener because, again, I grew up in Saudi Arabia. There's no Christians in Saudi unless you're working there. And the only Jewish friend that my dad has, he was Iraqi, Yehudi, and he lived in Vienna. That's why my dad took us to Vienna a lot, to Austria, because to go visit his Iraqi Jewish friend, he owned an antique store in Vienna, and we used to go visit him. He was absolutely wonderful. And my dad never told me that he was Jewish Iraqi. And then after a couple of times, I was like, Dad, how did you meet this guy? You were in Egypt and Jordan. How did you meet him? You never been to Austria before. He met him in Egypt. And they stayed in touch. After they graduated, he ended up fleeing Egypt, and my dad went to Saudi, but they stayed in touch somehow. He's into literature and writing and history and all this, so they had a lot in common. And he was just wonderful. I met his wife, his kids. We used to run around in the antique store, and I couldn't understand what he was saying because his accent was very, very heavy, especially being in Austria. It was like tainted with a little bit of German. And I said, Dad, he's so nice. He said, what do you expect? Of course he's nice. He's an Arab. And that stuck with me. It really resonated with me. Yeah, he's an Arab. He's from Iraq. So what if he is Jewish? And that was my first encounter with an Arab Jew, is that guy in Austria. And it was very fascinating. But going back to Egypt, when I mingled with the Egyptian and we went everywhere, ask Ihab. We went to really high affluent area, and we went to a very, like I said, traditional Baladi district. I prayed in Masjid Amr ibn al-As. I visited St. Sergius Church, which is connected to another church where St. George was actually buried there. It's absolutely beautiful church. And then I prayed in Masjid al-Azhar, and I prayed in Hassan al-Hussein. But the moment you step out of the courtyard, there's a church next door. So when we went to Luxor in Qina, our guide was Orthodox Christian, and our driver was a young man who was Muslim. And they were absolutely beautiful together. When you witnessed their interaction, they were like mother and daughter, mother and son. And they've been working together in tourism. And we drove everywhere. We were there for 3 days, and I noticed something, and I shared that with her. And I said, how is it with every mosque in Egypt across street, in the same courtyard, there's a church? So she explained to me that when Amr ibn al-As was commissioned to come to Egypt and liberate them from the Roman, they came in peace. He traveled and toured all Egypt, and he sat down with the head of the churches, and he said, listen, we are not gonna pressure you to convert to Islam, but we wanna spread Islam in Egypt. They said, fine, but we are not ready to destroy our churches in order for you guys to build a mosque. And Amr ibn al-As said, no, you don't have to do that. We have two options: either to build right next to you, or we will pay you to move your churches if we decide on this location is the best location for the mosque, to relocate your church, and we'll move your church to the next door. And that's why they decided that we can share the courtyard. There's a church and a mosque, a church and a mosque. That I never seen that in Saudi. I never experienced that in Saudi, nor Jordan. I never seen a church next to a mosque in Jordan. But let's bring Ihab in. What are your thoughts?
So my thoughts are like, I don't, when you're saying that about the churches and the mosques in Egypt, I don't remember a story, except for one. I believe somebody told us a story about one church, but I don't remember any story. All the churches stayed where they were at, and they just built the mosques next to them, and they shared the courtyard, or share this, like, it's funny, they share this like small street, and you just cross, and you're going from a mosque to a church. They're right across the street from each other. And I'm talking about, not like, it's not a big street. It's a small little, it's almost like an alleyway. It's hard to explain, but there are no cars in some of these areas. So people are, walking down to enter the church or enter the mosque, or there are people selling items. Like I remember in that alleyway there, coming out of the church, they were selling, a lot of different Christian, like, crosses and holy water and just a lot of different things, which was very neat. And then like across the ways where, they're selling things from the mosque too. So there was nobody interacting in any negative way. I did not see any of that there. So it's just a really nice feeling to have, and to see this live in front of you and say to yourself, wow, people actually can get along like this. And why isn't it happening outside of Egypt? And, we can talk about like a lot of the other areas around the world, but, one of the comments I believe my uncle told us that if anything were to happen, Egyptians unite under the Egyptian flag, Christian, Muslim, everybody combines, becomes one unit. And which I think is a very cool thing to say. Because, where in the world would two religions like unite like that and really or support the country for its goals? Could be like political, it could be could be industrial type goals, but it's a really I would like to see more of this in how other countries, Arab, Muslim, and Arab Christians interact. And it could be. I have not been to any other Arab country except for Egypt. Slava has been to Saudi, and as you know, Saudi is, like she said, there is just the Christian people that are working there or that are there are working in in the oil industry or whatever it might be. I don't know about Emirates or any of the other Gulf countries. Jordan, I believe you said there are Christians in Jordan. Slava.
There are Catholics, but I never seen a church in Jordan. I mean, I vacation in Jordan because, my dad's family and my parents' family are there. I don't know, from 74 till 84. So for 10 years back and forth, we went. I don't remember. I could have seen it, but I don't remember because it didn't really impact me in the same way. Saudi right now, I don't know. Even if you are working in Saudi in a employment capacity, not just visiting, and if you are a non-Muslim, the only spot back in my day, the only spot that you can actually practice Christianity is if you go to your own consulate or the embassy, because that's a sovereign ground. So they have chapels inside the embassies and consulate, because we used to get invited to Christmas, Easter, French consulate in Jeddah, the German consulate, the British consulate, the Japanese consulate too. And they used to have events like that. But let's bring JD Yusef into this. What is your experience with that?
Yeah, so to highlight a little bit about what your trip kind of encompassed in Egypt, another pretty famous shared space for our listeners and viewers is going to be the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus, Syria, where the head of John the Baptist is apparently, I guess, preserved or put there. So they both have a mosque and a church and a shared courtyard, just like what Dr. Slava and Dr. Ihab were discussing. This shared history, culture as well, and religion. This is actually very beautiful too. In Nazareth and throughout Palestine, Muslim families frequently celebrate the Feast of the Annunciation along their Christian counterparts. Mary, or Maryam, is revered in Islam as the purest woman, and a whole chapter of the Quran is named after her. Shrines to Mary and Saint George, who is also known as Al-Khadr in Arabic and Islam, are frequented by both Muslim and Christians, believe it or not, especially in places like Al-Khadr near Bethlehem, Palestine, Bethlehem. But again, just highlighting some of these shared spaces, instances of cohesion. And then you look at other places of shared spaces like the tomb of the prophet Joseph, Nabi Yusuf, huge flashpoint today in Nablus. And that's also shared between Muslim and our Jewish counterparts. And also, if I can refine a point that was made going back to Gamal Abdel Nasser, it wasn't out of hate or any sort of racism that the Jews were actually expelled out of Egypt. It was simply a security thing. There's we can say deep mistrust. And that kind of was a knee-jerk reaction to, okay, well, how do we deal with this? So it was mainly embedded in Egyptian security, both long-term and short-term, was kind of the instances for kind of the expulsion of Jews. Because to Dr. Ihab's point, his father's relation. Oh, and Dr. Slava, your father's relationship with your Jewish friend is in where we come from. We respect and love each person, each religion. It's also written in Islam, by the way, to protect people of the book, both Jews and Muslims, right? So seeing this in real life really resonates. And then also, why isn't it highlighted? Well, that's something that, we should ask ourselves. Popular culture shares or just shows, a glimpse. And sometimes also, we were talking about this earlier, the voices of the minority get unfortunately highlighted the most. For whatever reason, I will say that fear and emotions is a huge motivator. So, you can scare people into doing something. And, that also kind of, creates an agenda for something greater, right?
And for the sake of laying down the fundamental principle of being a Muslim for our audience, just in case you guys don't know, to be recognized as a true Muslim, you have to submit to the fact that Christianity and Judaism are the two other divine religion that we have to recognize. So those are the three holy book holders, right? Religion, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. We are required to believe in all the prophets, من النبي سيدنا إبراهيم all the way down, of course, سيدنا محمد عليه الصلاة والسلام, بس سيدنا موسى and Sayyidina Isa, those are the two prime prophets that paved the way and made it happen and made it a reason for God to grant Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ the mission of prophecy to complete. So Sayyidina Musa completed Sayyidina Isa completed Sayyidina Musa, and Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ had to complete. He was commissioned to complete Sayyidina Isa's prophecy and his mission, because unfortunately his life was cut short. So both Christianity and Islam, because we are here, we don't have, unfortunately, maybe next time we'll have a Jewish Arab that can speak for that, is believe in a higher power and place a huge importance on prayer and spiritual practices. Our holy books, the Bible and the Quran, and also including the Torah, may have different names to them, but they both share the same messages of love, compassion, and kindness towards others. And that's what, and these books are mentioned in the Quran, the Torah wal Injil, the Torah and the Bible. Our cultural similarities, our cuisine, our music, our, societal values, they are very intertwined, and they reflect centuries of coexistence and shared experiences too, which is absolutely true. So an Arab is an Arab. It doesn't, regardless of the structured religion that you belong to, regardless of the way you cook your rice. An Arab is an Arab, regardless how you barbecue your meat. It doesn't really matter. An Arab is an Arab. At the end of the day, the fundamental principles of how we conduct ourselves is only one way. So I just wanted to build that up for our audience, that if me as a Muslim deny Sayyidina Musa or deny Torah, right, I cannot be a true Muslim. If I am, as a Muslim, deny Sayyidina Isa, Jesus, alayhi salam, or deny, right, the Bible, writings of the Bible, I'm not considered a true Muslim, right? So we expect that from Judaism and Christianity too, to recognize Islam as a divine religion And it is a completion of Sayyidina Musa's work and Sayyidina Isa's mission. So I'm sure the majority of people don't even know that. But let us go back, just because I want to ask JD Yusef, since you were born in California as a Christian, 100% Palestinian, when was your first encounter of the understanding of what Islam is all about? And how was that experience?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dr. Slava. So, growing up in California was I don't know, kind of a blessing in a way, because I actually got to see both communities interact, and both the Arab Christians and the Arab Muslims, kind of interact cohesively. You know, we would do Eid parties, Ramadan, and then we would invite our Muslim neighbors to Christmas and Easter. My parents used to raise all the kids together. I mean, we were raised similarly. We were in the bathtub together. It doesn't matter. Kids are kids. You know, religion that's not a, you know, so, at the end of the day, you know, I think, it speaks to, you know, where's your values, where's your humanity, you know, that needs to be paramount. And, you know, and I have a couple quotes that I'd like to end this off later on, but I think that are going to be powerful. But, you know, very, very stark difference when we moved to Alabama, because we came to a society that's a little more conservative, both in politics and in religion. And you did not see a mix of the Muslim or Christian communities at all. So very, very different. We had our own contacts. We would naturally go and make our own friends, and kind of that's how we stayed connected with our people. And I should say also, the Arab culture was a lot more solidified. This is a really good point. Solidified and cemented in our Muslim brothers and sisters. I will say that their parents did a very good job of keeping the culture. Here among the Christians, among the Arab Christians, there was almost an attempt to fit in, to not be different, to say, hey, I'm just like you because I don't want to raise any flags, or, you know, so, you didn't get a whole lot of the culture among the Arab Christians, unfortunately. So, you know, you wouldn't find a lot of people that actually spoke Arabic. You know, that was a huge thing. You know, going back to Dr. Slava's point, being an Arab has nothing to do with blood or color. It's a linguistic and a cultural thing. That's why we don't see color in the Arab world. You know, we have dark and we have brown. That's it. And actually, the more dark you are, the more prized you are. You know, that's just one of the things. So, you know, it's very, very different in a good way, right? So, but you know, I hope we're doing a good job of combating all of these misconceptions about the Arab world, because it's not monolithic in any way. And also to Dr. Slava, your upbringing, by the way, in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, I commend you, because that education system is very, very strong in the way it's implemented and the way it's articulated. And I saw that firsthand with one of my best friends in Alabama, who was, we called him, you know, fresh off the boat. He was brand new here, from Jeddah. And the questions he would ask me as an Arab Christian, I was just like I didn't understand where they were coming from. And it was because he had no connection, no interactions with a Christian whatsoever. I was the first Christian he'd ever met, 2015, you know, and we're in our 20s, you know, and just remarkable, because I'm not used to that. I'm used to, you know, my Muslim brother who's Palestinian knows everything about me, knows everything about my religion, you know, knows more about my religion than a normal American, you know, who's Christian. I mean, that's a fact, you know. So, very, very interesting, though.
That is true. Simply, I'm one of five. The first child and the fifth child, they're redheads, just like JD Yusef. right? My ammi, my dad's brother, he's blonde, blue-eyed because my paternal grandmother, Zia Nabilsi, Allah yarhamha wa yahsin ilayha, she's blonde, blue eyes. So my dad has my complexion. He's number one. Number two, his sister has my complexion. But Ammi Hatim, he had the blonde blue eyes. So the first time I met him, he was married. His wife is blonde green eyes. So all his kids are blonde blue eyes. So when I met him, I hid behind my mom and she said, don't, you need to be polite. Why don't you go say hi to your uncle? And looked at her. It's like, this is not my uncle. And she looked at me and she said, what are you talking about? This is Uncle Hatim, your dad's brother. And I said, that's impossible. He doesn't look like my dad. That's my first encounter of an Arab that doesn't look like me. So, and I had doubts. And my cousins, they did not look like me. How can they be part of my family where my lineage is mixed like that? Then my mom reminded me, your brother, right? My youngest brother wasn't born yet. My older brother, he's a redhead, right? With brown eyes. She said, you're not redhead, but your brother's a redhead because my maternal grandfather, my mom's father was a redhead, which we get it from the English and the Turks. So that's when I started kind of, accepting the fact that we are multicolored, we are multicultured, but we don't see color. I have one of my mom's sisters, she married, her husband is from the tribes of Jordan. He's very dark. I think his ancestors come from when they had slaves, Badul Urdun, but he's a descendant of that. He's very, very dark. So when I met him the first time, again, I was just scared to shake his head. I was like, how is he so dark and he speaks Arabic? And my mom's like, what are you talking about? Because my milk mother, my nanny, she was from Al Habasha, from Eastern Africa, but she didn't speak Arabic very well. So she said, don't be rude, go say hi to your uncle. And it's like, how's that even possible? Like, those are my first cousins and they are darker than me. But that's the way it is. But if I did not travel to Jordan or met my extended family, I would have still be stuck in that kind of, fishbowl that all the Arabs had to look like a Bedouin, like my complexions, whether it's a little bit darker skin, lighter skin, but it's just a darker hair and dark eyes. That's it. There's no green, there's no blue, there's no blonde, there's no redhead. But that was really fascinating. So my question is, why do you guys think that the media is constantly play up our differences rather than highlighting our commonalities, our similarity? Why do you think is that?
Dr. Ihab, I got one good answer after you.
You have an answer or you want me to go?
You go first.
So the way I see media here, media in Europe, it doesn't matter where it is, social media, you get more clicks, you get more views, and you get more people really interested when you show the bad, the negative. I'm telling you this right now. I've not watched news on any channel recently other than it talking about something negative about a politician, an area in the world. It was, and it's been like that for such a long time here in the United States that I remember only one. He used to be on ABC World News, Peter Jennings, I believe his name was, and the whole 30 minutes of the nightly news, the world news, would be just about conflict or politicians, and he always, and this was his signature, he always ended with a nice story or some nice thing happening around the world. And he would say, it's not all bad. There are good things. But I think you get more people to view the news channels when you're talking about negative kind of negativity. That's the way it is. And I don't know if that's the nature of humans, that they really are kind of attracted to that, but I would think it would be the opposite. But go ahead. I don't know. That was my take on it. Just
No, I think that's a very good take, honestly, and I think it's also going back to that fear factor and playing on emotions, and yeah, in this social media age, you want the clicks and you want that. So yeah, I definitely can see that. My answer is just divide and conquer, honestly. So if you have a divided populace, whatever the populace is, then that actor can get its way, whatever the way is, whatever it wants. So yeah, when you have a divided people, it's much easier to get in. And actually to that point, I know we're talking about, the nice things and among the religions. Well, a lot of the historic distrust and mistrust that we've heard also growing up, because there are those stories that you hear negative about Christianity and about Islam, right? But the majority of it in Palestine, at least, stems from the onset of the occupations coming in to basically sow distrust among the Palestinians to come and occupy homes and land. So it's to say, hey, your Muslim neighbor actually doesn't like you or actually wants to, do something. So you had first time a force that was coming in that was literally trying to divide, and it was again to sow discord. They needed these two populations to kind of go at one another. If they eliminate or they distrust one another, then another occupying force can come in. It was almost when Israel entered in Jerusalem for the first time in the 60s. A lot of Christians thought that Arab Christians thought that they were free from any sort of harm, and that was not the case. It was a narrative that was pushed out there that was to say, hey, we're here just to protect you guys, but not these guys. That was never the case. So I think that's a really important point to bring up.
There are a lot of misconceptions, unfortunately. And the way I look at it, I think since the Nakba, the Western, even before, since World War I would say, the Western relationship with the Arab or the Middle East, almost like this narcissist spouse, like the adoration, oh, you are so amazing, the Arabian lifestyle, we love it. Then denigration, right? Breaks you down before you know it. So the moment they secure that position, that we are being adored, we're being admired, we're being appreciated, then they secure the position in the Middle East, then they denigrate us, right? So they made us feel really, really lousy. Then they discard of us. So that's the narcissistic approach of a narcissist in any relationship. And that's how I view, since the Great War until now, the relationship between the Western world or the influence of Western world in the Middle East. Like you said, it's divide and conquer. The more we are divided, we're not paying attention. We're not focused on the good. We're not focused on the unification. We're not focused on the commonalities. We're not focused on the similarities. We're focused on the differences. Now, to set the record straight, JD Yusef is the first and the only Christian Arab I ever met in the United States. Now, I met Christian Arabs, but mostly Armenians, like I said, in Lebanon when we used to visit, or Jordan, or in Saudi Arabia. And I've learned so much from him because I had no idea. I knew a little bit about Catholics, Arab Catholics, or Arab Armenian, but I had no idea about Orthodox Arabs. And it was very, very fascinating. And to be honest with you, he's more traditionalist as an Arab than even I am. Although he was born in California, he never been to the Middle East. Hopefully one day he will. I met again that Iraqi Jewish friend of my dad before I even met a American Christian, Palestinian, or Arab. So that's very fascinating. But what we took out of our journey or our visit to Egypt, and to a certain point, I had the same feeling when I was in Jordan a little bit, that we don't see color like we see color here in the United States. We don't see a religious background. We don't see ethnic background like we see here in the United States. It's almost like a Western taught way to how to perceive the world. When I went to Egypt, I'm like, hold on a second. I just went here and there and over there, and I didn't feel a difference. Right. And, waiters and waitresses that have like tattooed crosses. Some of them, they have Quran or Muhammad necklaces. The others will have like crosses, and they're mingling together. They live together. They're neighbors. And to relate to JD Yusef's point, in Jerusalem, my paternal grandmother, her bint Khalidha, she lived in Nablus. And her neighbor to the right of her is Christian Palestinian, and her neighbor to the left of her is Jewish Palestinian. And they were the best of friends. They were inseparable, according to my grandmother. And they babysat each other's kids. They played with each other's grandkids. They have tea time. They take turns for the holidays, and they celebrated each other's holidays. There's no difference. And that was my first almost exposure to the multi-religious relationship in Palestine, according to, or Nablus specifically, according to my paternal grandmother, which is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And not until I went to Egypt and that got validated, confirmed, that at the end of the day, we're all Arabs. Like Ihab's uncle said, he said, listen, when the tough gets going, all Egyptians are united for one purpose, is to sustain and protect this country, Egypt. We are all Egyptian, regardless, which was very heartwarming, and it was absolutely beautiful thing. So we have reached the end of our hour. So let's go back to our panel. We'll start with Dr. Ihab Abdurrahim. What is your advice to our listeners as a Muslim Egyptian American?
I would advise people to be open-minded with all religions. And I mean, it's tough now in this world we live in, where this divide and conquer, like JD Yusef says, is happening. And when there's more commonality between us than differences, it amazes me that we look at the differences and pick it apart and make it our major majority thought patterns. And that's something I would hope would change. Maybe some people take this podcast and kind of listen to it and go, wait, and they start thinking, oh, maybe we should look at it this way, a little bit more positively, because I really think the differences are being created by certain groups or certain minority groups that should really be ignored, in my opinion. That's, you want to kind of move forward and have a positive view on life and on people and on religions. You have to let go of that negative thought pattern, and whoever's putting that negativity in your mind, ignore them and just move on. Is kind of my take on it.
Very well said.
Let's move to JD Yusef.
Yes, Dr. Slava, I got a couple book recommendations, a couple quotes, and some closing thoughts. Closing thoughts is the memory of the Arab Christian tribes who ruled, resisted, suffered, and later coexisted within the early Islamic framework is a testament to a shared struggle and shared hope. They embody the potential for unity beyond doctrinal boundaries and remind us that the roots of Arab identity are neither exclusively Islamic nor exclusively Christian. They are shared and shall be respected. 2 book recommendations. Robert Hoyland, remember that name. He's amazing in this space. In God's Path, The Arab Conquest and the Creation of the Islamic Empire. Second book is Sidney Griffith, The Church in the Shadow of the Mosque. Beautiful book. Very, very beautiful. Hits every single topic that we actually spoke on today. Last quotes to end the podcast. Religion should unite hearts, not harden them. The crescent and the cross have more in common than we are told. We are all people of the book, walking different pages of the same story. And final, last but not least, in the Levant, the adhan and the church bells echo from the same mountains.
That is beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for that. As you guys know, this podcast is all about mastering an unlimited mindset by eliminating limited beliefs. And we have touched on this. If you want to master an unlimited mindset, do your own research. Get the knowledge, right? Knowing is growing. Do not listen to the highlights. Do not listen to the media. And media, like we said, have a specific agenda. They are selling information, and they only going to sell information that will sell well, regardless if it's good or bad, negative or positive, dividing or unifying. It doesn't really matter. But us as humanity, as human being, and just like I said in many episodes, a human is a person of earth. As long as we live on this earth, we are human. So do your own research, get into the way of processing information within your belief system, not other people's belief system, and reach to your own conclusion and see what happens. You're going to be enlightened, and every religion is beautiful. Every race is beautiful. Every background is beautiful. Humanity is beautiful. So thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much for watching. And thank you for our panel for coming on. I'm sure we're going to have more episodes to dig a little bit deeper into that. But as a reminder, these episodes are uploaded every single Wednesday on the Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And also they are available for you to watch on the Greenwood Dental Partners YouTube channel. So please like and share and hit the notification button so you don't miss any future episodes. And I hope I see you next time. This is Slava, the Jordanian.